Nathaniel Granger stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Tonopah, Nevada on a scorching August afternoon in 1887, clutching a small leather satchel that contained everything she owned in this world, including the worn boots on her feet that she had not removed for 3 days straight. The journey from Philadelphia had been grueling, each mile taking her further from the orphanage where she had spent her childhood, and the sewing factory where she had spent her young womanhood hunched over fabric until her fingers bled. The advertisement had seemed like a miracle when she found it tucked between the pages of a discarded newspaper during her lunch break. Wanted, respectable woman for marriage, rancher in Tonopah, Nevada seeking companionship and help managing household. Honest work, honest man. The words had glowed on the page like a promise of something better, something real. But now, standing in the blazing heat of this Nevada mining town with dust coating her threadbare traveling dress and sweat trickling down her spine, Nathaniel felt the first tremors of doubt creeping through her chest. The boots on her feet, the only decent pair she owned, had been her mother's before consumption took her when Nathaniel was just 7 years old. They were too large, stuffed with newspaper to make them fit, and the leather had cracked in places that let in sand and small stones. But they were hers, and she could not bear to remove them, not when sleeping on hard benches at way stations, not when sharing a room with strangers, not even to air out her aching feet. The stagecoach driver tossed her single trunk down from the roof with a thud that made her wince. Everything breakable she owned was wrapped carefully in her spare dress, but still she worried. "Your man's supposed to meet you here, miss." The driver spat tobacco juice into the dirt and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Yes, Mr. Adam Yancy. He owns a cattle ranch outside of town." The driver's weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile. "Yancy, sure, I know him. Good man. Keeps to himself mostly, but fair in his dealings. You could do worse out here." Before Nathaniel could respond, a deep voice cut through the afternoon heat. "Miss Granger." She turned and felt her breath catch somewhere between her lungs and her throat. Adam Yancy stood perhaps 6 feet tall with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. His face was tanned the color of saddle leather, with lines around his eyes that suggested he spent more time squinting at horizons than sleeping in soft beds. Dark hair curled slightly beneath his hat, and when he removed it in greeting, she saw eyes the color of creek water, green-brown and searching. "Mr. Yancy." She offered her hand, hoping he would not notice how it trembled. His grip was firm but gentle, calloused palms rough against her work-worn fingers. "Welcome to Tonopah. I hope the journey was not too difficult. It was long, but I am here now." She tried to smile, tried to look like the kind of woman who belonged in this harsh landscape rather than a frightened girl playing dress-up in her dead mother's boots. Adam's gaze traveled over her, not in the leering way some men looked, but with genuine concern. "You look exhausted. Let me get your trunk loaded and we will head to the ranch. I have a room prepared for you, and my housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, has supper ready." "You have a housekeeper?" Nathaniel had not expected that. The advertisement had mentioned help managing the household. "She comes in 3 times a week to help with the heavy cleaning and cooking. She is getting on in years, and I thought you might appreciate having another woman around, at least at first." He hefted her trunk as though it weighed nothing and carried it toward a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Nathaniel followed, each step sending little sparks of pain through her feet. The boots rubbed against blisters that had blistered upon blisters, and she could feel dampness that might have been blood soaking into the newspaper padding. But she kept her face smooth, her gait as even as she could manage. The ranch was an hour's ride from town, following a road that wound through sagebrush and scraggly juniper. Adam kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the ranch. He ran about 200 head of cattle, he explained, with help from 2 hired hands who lived in the bunkhouse. The main house had been his father's, built when Nevada was still a territory. "My parents passed 5 years ago," he said, his voice going quiet. "Influenza swept through one winter and took them both within a week of each other. I have been managing alone since then, but a ranch needs more than one person to make it a home." "I am sorry for your loss." Nathaniel meant it. She knew the hollow ache of losing parents. "And yours?" he asked. "Your letter mentioned you were orphaned young. My mother died when I was 7. My father I never knew. She worked as a seamstress until she could not work anymore, and then the church took me in." She did not mention the years of cold dormitories and cruel matrons, the way the other girls had mocked her oversized boots, the gnawing hunger that had been her constant companion. "I learned to sew, and I worked in a factory for the past 6 years. You are 23 now," your letter said. "Yes, and you are 27. 28 as of last month." He glanced at her with something that might have been amusement. "I suppose we are doing this all backwards, getting to know each other after you have already traveled 2,000 miles. I suppose we are." Nathaniel allowed herself a small smile. There was something about Adam Yancy that eased the tight knot of fear in her chest. He seemed steady, like the mountains rising in the distance, permanent and reliable. The ranch house appeared as they crested a low rise, and Nathaniel felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. It was larger than she had expected, 2 stories of weathered wood with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Outbuildings dotted the landscape. A barn, a chicken coop, what looked like a smokehouse, and further out, the bunkhouse Adam had mentioned. A small, elderly Chinese woman emerged from the house as they pulled up, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face was a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and kind. "This is Mrs. Chen," Adam said, helping Nathaniel down from the wagon. "Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Granger. Call me Nathaniel, please." She offered her hand, and Mrs. Chen took it in both of her small ones. "Welcome, welcome. You must be very tired. Come inside. I have tea ready and supper will be soon." The inside of the house was simple but clean, with sturdy furniture and windows that let in the late afternoon light. Mrs. Chen led Nathaniel up the stairs to a bedroom that took her breath away. It was not large or fancy, but it had a real bed with a quilt, a washstand with a mirror, and a wardrobe for her few belongings. A window looked out over the ranch yard toward the mountains beyond. "This is beautiful," Nathaniel whispered. "You rest, clean up. I bring hot water, Mrs." Chen patted her arm and bustled out. Alone for the first time in days, Nathaniel sank onto the bed and let out a shaky breath. Her feet throbbed with a fierce insistence that could no longer be ignored. She should remove the boots, clean her wounds, let her feet breathe. But the thought of revealing her poverty, of showing Adam or Mrs. Chen the newspaper stuffing and the bloody rags, filled her with shame. These people had taken her in, offered her a home, and she did not want them to see how desperate she truly was. "Mrs. Chen returned with a pitcher of steaming water and a basin, setting them on the washstand. "You wash, feel better. Supper in 1 hour." She started to leave, then turned back. "Miss Nathaniel, you need anything you ask. We are glad you are here." After she left, Nathaniel washed her face and hands, unpinned her dark hair, and tried to work some of the dust from it. She changed into her only other dress, barely better than the one she had traveled in, and tried to make herself presentable. Her feet screamed for relief, but she kept the boots on, tightening the laces as much as she could bear. Supper was a quiet affair around a large wooden table. Adam's 2 ranch hands, A grizzled older man named Hank and a young Mexican man named Carlos joined them. The food was simple but plentiful. Beef stew with vegetables, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Nathaniel tried to eat slowly, to not show how hungry she was, but everything tasted like heaven after weeks of stale bread and weak coffee. Adam watched her from across the table, and she wondered what he saw. A thin woman with dark circles under her eyes and hands that could never quite lose the stains from fabric dye. A desperate mail-order bride who had nowhere else to go. "I thought we might go into town tomorrow," Adam said as Mrs. Chen cleared the dishes. "Get you some things you might need, supplies, whatever would make you comfortable." "That is very kind, but I have everything I need." The lie sat bitter on her tongue. She needed everything, but she had no money to pay for it. "Nathaniel." His voice was gentle but firm. "This is your home now, or it will be if we suit each other. I am not a wealthy man, but I can provide for my wife. It would please me to get you settled properly." Wife. The word hung in the air between them. They were not married yet. The agreement had been that she would come out, they would spend time getting to know each other, and if they found themselves compatible, they would wed. "We should probably talk about that," she said quietly. "The arrangements." Adam nodded. "You are tired tonight. Tomorrow we will talk. For now, you should rest." That night in the unfamiliar bed, Nathaniel finally unlaced her boots with shaking hands. The newspaper padding had stuck to her blisters, and removing it made her bite her lip hard enough to taste blood. Her feet were a mess of raw wounds and swelling. She cleaned them as best she could with water from the pitcher, wrapped them in strips torn from her oldest petticoat, and stuffed the boots with fresh newspaper she found in the room. In the morning, she could barely walk. Each step sent fire shooting up her legs, and she had to grip the stair railing to keep from crying out. Adam was waiting in the kitchen with coffee and breakfast. "Good morning," he said, then his eyes sharpened with concern. "Are you all right? You are limping. Just stiff from the journey." "I will be fine." She forced herself to walk normally to the table, though sweat broke out on her forehead from the effort. He did not look convinced, but he let it drop. Over eggs and bacon, they talked about the ranch, the town, the life she might have here. Adam explained that he usually attended church services in town on Sundays, that there was a schoolhouse if they had children someday, that Tonopah was growing thanks to the mining operations, but was still small enough that everyone knew everyone. "About the marriage," he said finally. "I want you to know there is no pressure. We will court properly, whatever that means out here. You have your own room, your own space. If after a few weeks or months you decide this is not what you want, I will pay for your passage back east or wherever you want to go." The generosity of it nearly broke her. "Why did you do this? The advertisement, I mean. There must be women in town." Adam looked down at his coffee, a faint color rising in his tanned cheeks. "I am not good at talking to people. Never have been. I can manage a ranch, work cattle, fix anything that breaks, but small talk and courting and all that, it does not come natural. My mother used to say I was born serious." He smiled slightly. The idea of writing letters, getting to know someone that way, it seemed easier. "And your letters were thoughtful, honest. I liked the person I met on paper." "I liked the person I met on paper too," Nathaniel admitted. "Well then." Adam stood and offered his hand. "Let us go to town and get you properly outfitted for Nevada living. You will need more than what you brought." The wagon ride to town was agony. Every bounce and jolt sent pain radiating through Nathaniel's feet. She gripped the seat hard and tried to keep her breathing steady. Adam kept up his gentle commentary about the land, the neighbors, the way the light changed over the mountains, and she was grateful for the distraction. Tonopah's main street was busier in the morning, with wagons and riders moving between the general store, the assay office, the saloon, and the various shops. Adam helped her down from the wagon, and she nearly collapsed when her feet hit the ground. Only his steadying hand on her elbow kept her upright. "Nathaniel." His voice was low, urgent. "Something is wrong, tell me. I am fine, truly." "You are not." He guided her to a bench outside the general store and knelt in front of her, heedless of the dust on his knees. "Is it your feet?" She could not meet his eyes. After a long moment she nodded. "May I?" He gestured to her boots. "Please, no, they are all I have." "All you have of what?" The kindness in his voice undid her. "Of my mother, they were hers. I know they are too big and ugly and falling apart, but they are all I have left of her. I cannot afford proper boots, and these have gotten me this far, and I just need to toughen up. I just need to—" "How long have you been walking on injured feet?" Adam interrupted gently. 3 days. "Since I left Philadelphia, but it is not that bad, I can manage." Adam sat back on his heels, something like pain crossing his face. "You have been in agony for 3 days and said nothing. I did not want you to think I was weak or complaining or human." He shook his head. "Wait here." He disappeared into the general store before she could protest. Nathaniel sat on the bench, fighting tears, aware of the curious glances from passers-by. She had ruined everything. He would send her back now, would not want a wife who could not even manage a simple journey without falling apart. When Adam emerged, he was carrying an armload of boxes. He set them on the bench beside her and opened the first one. Inside was a pair of beautiful leather boots, supple and new, sized for a woman. "I do not know if these will fit, but Mr. Patterson says we can exchange them if needed." He opened the second box. Another pair of boots, slightly different style. Then the third box. A third pair. Nathaniel stared at the boots, then at Adam, unable to speak. "You can keep your mother's boots safe," he said quietly. "As a treasure, as a memory. But you need boots that fit, that will not hurt you. These are practical for ranch life, and they are yours." "I cannot accept this. It is too much." "Nathaniel, look at me." When she did, his green-brown eyes were serious. "If we are going to make a life together, we have to be honest with each other. You were hurting and you hid it because you were afraid. I understand why, but you do not have to be afraid here. Not with me." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. "I have never had 3 pairs of anything." "Well, now you do." He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and genuine. "Let us get you to the doctor to have those feet looked at, and then we will get you everything else you need. And I do not want to hear another word about not being able to accept it. You are going to be my wife, and taking care of you is not charity, it is my privilege." The doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Sarah Winters, cleaned and bandaged Nathaniel's feet with efficient competence while lecturing her about the dangers of infection. She fitted her with a pair of soft slippers to wear while healing and gave Adam a list of supplies to change the dressings. "Keep her off her feet as much as possible for the next few days," Dr. Winters instructed. "No boots until the blisters are fully healed." "I will make sure she rests," Adam promised. Back at the general store, Adam insisted on buying Nathaniel 2 new dresses, a proper coat, a nightgown, undergarments, stockings, a hat, and various sundries. The store owner's wife, Mrs. Patterson, helped Nathaniel select what she needed while Adam settled the account without flinching at the cost. "He is a good man, that Adam Yancy," Mrs. Patterson said quietly as she wrapped the purchases. "Lost both his parents and kept that ranch running through sheer stubbornness. Been alone too long, if you ask me. I am glad he found someone." "I hope I can be what he needs," Nathaniel said. "Honey, the fact that you worry about that tells me you probably are." The ride back to the ranch was easier with her feet wrapped and resting on a folded blanket. Adam drove carefully, avoiding the worst of the ruts. When they arrived, he insisted on carrying her into the house despite her protests. "You heard the doctor. Off your feet." Mrs. Chen fussed over her, bringing tea and pillows, settling her on the sofa in the front room with her feet elevated. Adam brought in all the packages and set them nearby. "I am going to check on the hands, make sure everything is running smooth. You rest. Mrs. Chen will be here if you need anything." After he left, Mrs. Chen sat in the chair across from Nathaniel and fixed her with a knowing look. "That man, he has good heart. You are lucky. I know, I just hope I do not disappoint him. You already make him smile more than I have seen in 5 years. That is not nothing." She stood and patted Nathaniel's shoulder. "Now rest. Healing takes time." Over the next week, Nathaniel learned the rhythms of the ranch. She could not do much with her healing feet, but she sat at the kitchen table and helped Mrs. Chen with food preparation, mending, and other tasks that could be done sitting down. Adam checked on her frequently, bringing her books from his small library, telling her about his day, asking about her life before. They talked for hours, real conversations that went deeper than the polite letters they had exchanged. Nathaniel told him about the orphanage, the factory, the small kindnesses that had kept her going through hard years. Adam spoke of his childhood on the ranch, his father's stern but fair guidance, his mother's gentle wisdom, the loneliness that had settled over him after they died. "I thought about leaving," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. "Selling the ranch, going somewhere new where everything did not remind me of them. But this land is in my blood. I could not do it. I am glad you stayed." Nathaniel meant it. She was beginning to love this harsh, beautiful place, the wide sky and the clean air, the way the stars blazed at night like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. "So am I." He reached over and took her hand, and the simple touch sent warmth flooding through her chest. By the end of the second week, Nathaniel's feet had healed enough for her to try the new boots. She chose the most practical pair, dark leather that laced up past her ankles. They fit perfectly, snug without pinching, and when she stood, there was no pain. "How do they feel?" Adam asked anxiously. Nathaniel took a few experimental steps, then a few more. She walked across the room and back, marveling at the difference. "Like I am walking on clouds. I have never had boots that actually fit before." The smile that lit his face was worth more than any gift. "Good. Because I was hoping you might walk with me. I want to show you something." He led her out past the barn and up a gentle slope to a place where a few scrubby trees provided shade. From here, the entire ranch spread out below them, the house and outbuildings, the pastures where cattle grazed, the mountains rising beyond. "This is my favorite spot on the whole property," Adam said. "I come here when I need to think. I wanted to share it with you." They sat on a flat rock, shoulders nearly touching, and watched the ranch in comfortable silence. Finally, Adam spoke. "I think we suit each other. These past 2 weeks, getting to know you, having you here, it has felt right in a way I did not expect. I know we said we would take our time, but if you are willing, I would like to make this official. Will you marry me, Nathaniel?" Her heart was pounding, but for once it was not from fear. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band. "This was my mother's. I had it sized down based on the gloves you bought. I hope it fits." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and Nathaniel felt something unlock in her chest, some hard protective shell she had built around herself cracking open. "It is perfect. Everything is perfect." Adam leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, she leaned into the kiss and felt like she had finally come home. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Tonopah, with Mrs. Chen, Hank, Carlos, Dr. Winters, the Pattersons, and a handful of other townspeople in attendance. Nathaniel wore one of her new dresses and the boots Adam had bought her, and she carried wildflowers that Adam had picked that morning. The ceremony was simple, the words traditional, but when Adam slipped a second ring on her finger and she placed one on his, the moment felt sacred in a way that had nothing to do with the church building. The wedding dinner was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food enough for everyone. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with dishes both American and Chinese, and the celebration lasted well into the evening. When the guests finally departed and the newlyweds were alone, Adam carried Nathaniel over the threshold of their home. "I moved my things into the main bedroom," he said, setting her down gently. "But if you would rather wait, take more time, I can sleep in one of the other rooms." Nathaniel took his hand and led him up the stairs. "I do not want to wait. I want to start our life together right now." Their wedding night was tender and awkward and sweet, two people learning each other, finding their way together. Adam was patient and gentle, and Nathaniel felt safe in a way she had never experienced before. This was nothing like the crude jokes the factory girls had whispered, nothing like the fear she had carried about what marriage might mean. This was connection, intimacy, two souls joining together. In the morning, she woke to sunshine streaming through the window and Adam's arm around her waist. He stirred when she moved, pulling her closer. "Good morning, wife," he murmured against her hair. "Good morning, husband." She turned in his arms to face him, marveling at how natural it felt to be here, to be his. The months that followed were the happiest of Nathaniel's life. She learned the work of the ranch, feeding chickens, tending the vegetable garden, helping with the cooking and preserving. Mrs. Chen taught her to make bread that rose properly and pies with crusts that did not burn. Adam taught her to ride, patient through her tumbles and fears, until she could sit a horse with confidence. The seasons turned, autumn bringing cooler temperatures and the cattle drive to market. Adam was gone for 2 weeks, and Nathaniel discovered how much she had come to depend on his presence, his steady warmth, the way he listened when she talked. When he returned, trail-worn and exhausted, she flew into his arms without caring that Hank and Carlos were watching. "I missed you," she said against his chest. "I missed you too, every minute of every day." He kissed the top of her head. "I have something for you." He had brought her books from Carson City, 3 of them, novels she had mentioned wanting to read. It was a small thing, but it meant he had listened, remembered, thought of her even while working. She treasured those books like gold. Winter came hard to Nevada, with snow dusting the mountains and cold winds sweeping down into the valley. Nathaniel had never experienced cold like this, and Adam made sure she had warm clothes, a heavy coat, gloves, and sturdy boots for the weather. The 3rd pair of boots he had bought her, the tallest ones, turned out to be perfect for snow. "You planned this," she accused playfully. "You knew I would need different boots for different seasons." "I might have thought ahead," he admitted with a smile. On a particularly cold January evening, Nathaniel sat by the fire doing mending while Adam went over the ranch accounts. The peaceful domesticity of it struck her suddenly, how far she had come from the frightened girl on the stage-coach. "Adam, can I ask you something? Anything. You ever regret it? Taking a chance on a stranger through the mail?" He set down his pen and came to sit beside her on the sofa. "Not for one single second, do you?" "No, never. I just wonder sometimes why you chose me. My letters were nothing special. They were honest. You did not try to make yourself sound like something you were not. You wrote about real things, real feelings. And when I saw you step off that stagecoach, looking terrified but determined, I knew I had made the right choice." He took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. "Then over the next days and weeks, I watched you push through pain without complaint, try to be strong when you could have asked for help, worry about being a burden when you were already becoming the center of my world. How could I not love you?" It was the first time either of them had spoken the word aloud. Nathaniel felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." "Why does it scare you?" "Because I have never had anything this good before. I keep waiting for something to go wrong for it to be taken away." Adam pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Life is uncertain. I learned that when I lost my parents, but we cannot live in fear of loss. We just have to cherish what we have while we have it." He paused. "Though I plan on us having a very long time together." Spring arrived with wildflowers carpeting the valleys and calves being born in the pastures. Nathaniel helped with the birthing when needed, learning from Adam how to assist a struggling cow, how to care for a weak calf. The work was hard but satisfying, and she loved seeing new life come into the world. It was in early April that she realized her monthly courses had not come. At first she thought it was just the change in her life, the physical work, but when another week passed, she began to suspect. Dr. Winters confirmed it. She was pregnant, likely due in late October or early November. Adam's reaction when she told him was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, laughing and spinning her around before carefully setting her down as though she might break. "We are going to have a baby, a real family." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. Happy does not begin to cover it. I am over the moon. I am walking on air. I am every ridiculous cliché you can think of. He knelt and pressed his face to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. We are going to be your parents and we are going to love you so much." Nathaniel ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with emotion. This life growing inside her was tangible proof of the love she shared with Adam, a future taking shape. The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Nathaniel tired more quickly and had to give up some of the heavier work. Adam hovered like a worried mother hen until she laughingly told him she was pregnant, not made of glass. Mrs. Chen brought special teas to settle her stomach and made sure she ate properly. In late June, a letter arrived from the orphanage in Philadelphia. Nathaniel's hands shook as she opened it, afraid of what it might contain. But the news was unexpected. A distant cousin of her mother's had passed away and left a small inheritance. Not a fortune, but enough to make a difference. The money was being held for her claim. "What will you do with it?" Adam asked after she showed him the letter. Nathaniel thought for a long moment. "I want to do something that matters. Maybe help the orphanage, give other children the chances I did not have, or start a school fund here in Tonopah for children who cannot afford supplies." "That is a beautiful idea." Adam kissed her forehead. "You have the kindest heart." They decided together to split the inheritance, half to the Philadelphia orphanage and half to establish a school fund in Tonopah. It felt right, honoring the past while building the future. Summer heat bore down on the ranch, and Nathaniel spent the hottest afternoons resting in the coolest parts of the house. Her belly swelled, and she felt the baby move for the first time in late July, a flutter like butterfly wings that made her gasp with wonder. "Adam, come feel." She grabbed his hand and pressed it to her stomach. They waited, barely breathing, until the baby moved again. Adam's face transformed with awe. "That is our child, actually in there, moving around. I know. It is the most amazing and strangest feeling." As autumn arrived and her due date approached, Adam became increasingly anxious. He checked on her constantly, insisted she rest more, and nearly drove Dr. Winters to distraction with questions about every possible complication. "The baby will come when the baby is ready, Dr. Winters said firmly during one of Nathaniel's checkups. And Nathaniel is healthy and strong. Stop worrying yourself sick." "Easier said than done," Adam muttered. Labor began on a crisp November morning, 2 weeks past when they had expected. Nathaniel woke to contractions that were unmistakable, and Adam immediately sent Carlos racing to town to fetch Dr. Winters. Mrs. Chen arrived shortly after, taking charge with calm efficiency. The labor was long, lasting through the day and into the evening. Adam stayed by Nathaniel's side despite Mrs. Chen's suggestion that he wait downstairs. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, murmured encouragement when the pain became overwhelming. "I cannot do this," Nathaniel gasped during a particularly fierce contraction. "You can. You are the strongest person I know." Adam's voice was steady even though his eyes showed his fear. "You are just saying that. I am not. You survived an orphanage, worked in a factory, traveled across the country to marry a stranger, and fell in love with this harsh land. If you can do all that, you can do this." Dr. Winters arrived and took over with professional competence. "Everything is progressing normally. A few more hours, I would say." Those hours were the hardest of Nathaniel's life, but finally, near midnight, with one last tremendous effort, she felt the baby slide free. A thin cry filled the room, the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "It is a boy," Dr. Winters announced, holding up a squalling, red-faced infant. "Healthy lungs on this one." Adam was crying openly now, and Nathaniel felt tears streaming down her own face as Dr. Winters placed the baby, cleaned and wrapped in a blanket, in her arms. He was perfect, tiny and wrinkled with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably change color but were currently a deep blue. "Hello, little one," Nathaniel whispered. "We are your mama and papa and we have been waiting for you." Adam touched the baby's tiny hand, and impossibly small fingers wrapped around his much larger one. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I have never seen anything more beautiful in my life." They named him Thomas, after Adam's father. Thomas Adam Yancy joined the world with healthy cries, and an appetite that kept Nathaniel busy feeding him what felt like every hour. The first weeks were exhausting, full of sleepless nights and the steep learning curve of new parenthood. But they navigated it together. Adam changing diapers and walking the floor with a colicky baby while Nathaniel rested. Nathaniel feeding Thomas while Adam handled the ranch work he could not delegate. Mrs. Chen doted on the baby, bringing over traditional gifts and teaching Nathaniel about caring for an infant. The ranch hands became unlikely godfathers, Hank whittling toys for when Thomas was older and Carlos teaching him Spanish lullabies. Winter settled over the ranch again, and Nathaniel marveled at how different this year was from the last. Then she had been a new bride, still finding her way. Now she was a mother, a wife, a full partner in the ranch. The boots Adam had bought her carried her through days of work and nights of pacing with a fussy baby. She still had her mother's boots, carefully preserved in tissue paper in the bottom of her wardrobe, but they were a treasured memory now rather than a necessity born of desperation. On a clear February afternoon, Adam found Nathaniel in the nursery, rocking a sleeping Thomas. He sat on the floor beside the chair and took her free hand. "You remember 2 years ago when you stepped off that stage coach? How could I forget? I was terrified." "I was too, if I am being honest. Terrified you would take one look at me and get back on that coach. Terrified I had made a terrible mistake. Instead, you noticed I was hurting when I was trying so hard to hide it. You bought me boots." She smiled at the memory. 3 pairs, when I had never had more than 1 pair of anything. Best decision I ever made. Well, second best. The best was placing that advertisement. He squeezed her hand. "I want you to know, Nathaniel, that you have made this house a home again. You brought life and love back to a place that had become just a collection of buildings and responsibilities. You gave me a son, a family, a future worth dreaming about. You gave me all those things too, Nathaniel said softly. You gave me safety and respect and love. You saw me, really saw me, when I felt invisible. You made me believe I deserved good things. Thomas stirred in her arms, making small noises that would soon become demands for food. Adam leaned over and kissed his son's forehead, then Nathaniel's lips. I love you both more than I knew it was possible to love. We love you too. The years unfolded like the pages of a treasured book, each one adding to their story. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 2, Nathaniel discovered she was pregnant again. Their daughter, Mary, arrived in the spring of 1891, smaller than Thomas had been but with a powerful will that made itself known from the start. Adam expanded the ranch operations, buying more land and increasing the herd. Nathaniel became known in town for her charitable work, running the school fund they had established and organizing donation drives for families in need. The townspeople respected her quiet strength, the way she never forgot where she came from even as she built a comfortable life. On their 5th anniversary, Adam surprised her with a small ceremony. He had built a display case for her mother's boots, with a brass plate that read, "Where we come from shapes who we become, but it does not have to determine where we go." Nathaniel cried when she saw it, touching the glass that protected the worn leather. "It is perfect. She would have been so proud, I think." "I know she would. Look at the life you have built, the person you have become." Adam wrapped his arms around her from behind. "And you did it all in boots that fit." She turned in his embrace. "No, I did it all with a partner who saw my worth when I could not see it myself. The boots helped, but you changed my life." They stood there in their home, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had created together. Through the window, they could see Thomas and Mary playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the breeze. The ranch spread out beyond, the land they had worked and loved and poured their hearts into. Nathaniel thought back to that scared young woman who had arrived in Tonopah with nothing but a satchel and her mother's boots, refusing to remove them even when they caused her pain. She had been so afraid, so convinced she had to bear everything alone. But Adam had taught her that accepting help was not weakness, that vulnerability could be a strength, that love meant sharing both burdens and joys. More children followed as the years passed. Their son Benjamin arrived when Thomas was 6, and twin girls, Rose and Lily, completed their family when Nathaniel was 31. The house rang with noise and laughter, scraped knees and childhood dramas, bedtime stories and family dinners around the big table. Nathaniel taught all her children to work hard but also to be kind, to remember that everyone carried hidden hurts, to offer help without judgment. Adam taught them about the land, about cattle and horses, about the satisfaction of building something lasting with your own hands. The boots Adam had bought Nathaniel that first week lasted for years, carefully maintained and resoled when needed. When they finally wore out beyond repair, she replaced them with new ones, always keeping 3 pairs as Adam had established. It had become a family tradition, a reminder of where they had started. Hank retired when Thomas was 10, settling in a small house Adam helped him buy in town. Carlos married a girl from Tonopah and built a house on ranch property, raising his own family while continuing to work the land. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, and the whole town mourned the loss of her gentle wisdom. Through it all, Adam and Nathaniel's love deepened and matured. The passionate intensity of early marriage settled into something richer, the comfortable intimacy of two people who had weathered storms together and come through stronger. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, hands linked and hearts aligned. When Thomas turned 18, he announced his intention to attend university in California to study agriculture science. Nathaniel watched her firstborn prepare to leave with a mixture of pride and sadness. "I will come back," Thomas promised. "This ranch is my home, my legacy. I just want to learn things that will help us do it better." "I know you will come back," Nathaniel said, helping him pack, "but that does not make it easier to watch you go." Adam found her crying quietly in their room that night. "He will be fine. We raised him right." "I know. I am just remembering what it felt like to be young and leaving everything familiar behind. I want him to have adventure and learning, but I also want to protect him from every hurt. That is what being a parent is, I think. Loving them enough to let them go, trusting them with the tools you gave them." He held her close. "We have done well by our children, Nathaniel. All of them are kind and strong and capable. That is our real legacy." The ranch continued to thrive under Adam's careful management, and Nathaniel's attention to the details that made it a true home. Mary showed talent for business and helped expand their operations to include selling breeding stock to other ranchers. Benjamin loved the horses and specialized in training them. The twins were still young but showed signs of inheriting their mother's compassion and their father's practicality. On a warm June day in 1902, the family gathered to celebrate Adam and Nathaniel's 15th anniversary. Thomas had come home from university for the summer, taller and more confident but still their son. All 5 children were there, along with Carlos and his family, friends from town, and the ranch hands who had become extended family. As the sun set and lanterns were lit in the yard, Adam pulled Nathaniel aside for a private moment. They walked to their favorite spot on the hill, the place where he had proposed all those years ago. 15 years, Adam said, settling beside her on the familiar rock. "Longer than I had hoped for when I placed that advertisement, but not as long as I plan on having you. Good, because I am not done with you yet." Nathaniel leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been? If I had not seen that advertisement, or if I had been too afraid to answer it?" "Sometimes. But then I remember that I do not believe in chance. I think you were meant to come here, meant to be mine, meant to help me build this life. The details might have been different, but somehow, someway, I think we would have found each other." "That is very romantic for a practical rancher. You bring out the romantic in me." He kissed her temple. "Thank you, Nathaniel." "For what?" "For being brave enough to step off that stagecoach. For trusting me when you had no reason to. For making this house a home and this rancher a happy man. For giving me children and partnership and love that grows deeper every day. For being exactly who you are." Nathaniel turned to face him, cupping his weathered cheek in her hand. Silver threaded through his dark hair now, and lines had deepened around his eyes, but to her, he was as handsome as the day she first saw him. "I should be thanking you. You saw me when I was at my lowest, desperate and hurting, and you treated me with dignity. You gave me boots that fit, but more than that, you gave me a life that fits. You never made me feel less than, never threw my past in my face, never treated my love as anything less than the precious gift it was. You made me believe in myself. We saved each other, I think." Adam pulled her close. 2 lonely people who took a chance on a stranger and found home. From the house below, they could hear their children's voices raised in song, a silly tune Thomas had learned at school. The sound carried on the evening air, mixing with laughter and the soft lowing of cattle in the distance. "Our family," Nathaniel said softly. "Our life. I would not change a single thing." Not even those first 3 days in your mother's boots, she considered. No, not even that. Because it brought us to that moment where you saw my pain and chose to help. It showed me the kind of man you are, the kind of partner I could trust. Those boots hurt my feet, but they led me to you, so I am grateful for them. They sat together as the stars emerged, content in the silence and in each other. Below, the party continued without them for a while, their family and friends celebrating the love that had built this legacy. Eventually, they returned to the gathering, Adam's arm around Nathaniel's waist and her head on his shoulder. Their children ran to greet them, even the older ones still wanting that connection to their parents. Nathaniel looked at Adam over their children's heads and saw her own joy reflected in his eyes. This was what happiness looked like, she thought. Not a moment of perfection, but a life built together through hard work and honesty and love that refused to quit even when things got difficult. It was children playing in the yard and cattle in the pastures and a partner who knew your heart. It was boots that fit and a home that welcomed and a future that stretched out bright and full of promise. The years continued to pass, each one adding texture and depth to their story. Grandchildren arrived as Thomas married a teacher from California and started a family. Mary found love with a banker's son from Carson City and brought him to live on the ranch. Benjamin partnered with a horse breeder in Montana, but returned home often. The twins, inseparable as ever, both married in their early 20s and built houses on ranch land, keeping the family close. Adam's hair went fully silver, and Nathaniel found gray threading through her own dark locks. Their hands grew gnarled from decades of work, but they still fit together perfectly when they walked. The ranch became a gathering place for their expanding family, Sunday dinners that required multiple tables and holiday celebrations that filled the house with noise and love. On the day of their 30th anniversary, Adam found Nathaniel in the garden she had cultivated over the years. She was kneeling between rows of vegetables, pulling weeds with steady efficiency. He watched her for a moment, marveling that 30 years had passed since that nervous bride stepped off the stagecoach. "Need some help?" he asked. She looked up and smiled, the expression lighting her face in a way that still made his heart skip. "I could use some company." He knelt beside her, their movements synchronized from decades of working side by side. They weeded in comfortable silence for a while before Nathaniel spoke. "I found something yesterday while cleaning out the attic. That first letter you sent me, responding to my answer to your advertisement. I had forgotten I saved it. What did it say? I do not remember. You wrote that you were looking for a partner, not a servant or an ornament. You said you wanted someone who valued honesty over flattery, hard work over easy promises. You said you could offer a home, respect, and the chance to build something meaningful together." She sat back on her heels. "You have given me all that and so much more. I meant every word, but I had no idea how much you would give back to me. I was thinking I would get a helpmate, someone to share the workload. Instead, I got you. My love, my partner, the mother of my children, the center of my entire world." "We were lucky," Nathaniel said. "So many mail-order bride stories do not end well. We could have been strangers who never connected, or worse. It was not just luck. We chose each other every day. When things got hard, when there were disagreements or difficulties, we chose to work through them together. That was not luck, that was commitment." Nathaniel reached for his hand, dirt-stained fingers intertwining. "Do you know what I think about sometimes? That girl who would not take off her boots, who was so afraid and proud that she walked on bleeding feet rather than show weakness. I wish I could go back and tell her it would all be okay, that the man waiting for her would see her value, that she was heading toward a happiness she could not imagine. You could not have known. Neither of us could. We just had to have faith. And 3 pairs of boots, Nathaniel added with a small smile. Adam laughed, the sound rich and warm. And 3 pairs of boots. That evening, their family gathered for a dinner party that lasted well into the night. Grandchildren ran wild through the house while the adults caught up and shared stories. Thomas proposed a toast to his parents, speaking of the example they had set, the love they had modeled, the legacy they had built not just in land and cattle, but in the values they had instilled in their children and grandchildren. Nathaniel looked around the table at the faces she loved, all of them here because she had been brave enough to answer an advertisement and desperate enough to endure 3 days in ill-fitting boots. Every pain, every fear, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it to arrive at this moment. As she and Adam prepared for bed that night, she caught sight of the display case holding her mother's boots. They were so small, so worn, so inadequate for the life she had needed to live. Yet they had carried her to the stagecoach, off it again in Tonopah, through those first agonizing days. They had been enough until Adam gave her better. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, coming up behind her. "That those boots are proof that sometimes the things that hurt us are also the things that carry us to where we need to be. If they had fit properly, I might not have been in such pain. You might not have noticed. The whole trajectory of our lives might have been different. Or we might have found our way anyway. I like to think we would have." She turned in his arms. "Maybe. But I am glad it happened the way it did. I am glad you saw me, really saw me from the very beginning." They stood together in front of the case, reflected in the glass alongside the old boots. 2 people who had started as strangers and became everything to each other. 2 people who had built a life, a family, a legacy of love. The ranch continued under their guidance for many more years. Even as they aged and had to delegate more of the physical work, Adam and Nathaniel remained the heart of the operation. They were consulted on all major decisions, their wisdom sought by children and grandchildren alike. Nathaniel's charitable work expanded to include a scholarship fund for young women seeking education, a cause close to her heart given her own limited opportunities. Adam became known throughout Nevada as a fair dealer and an expert in cattle breeding, his reputation bringing buyers from several states. On a crisp autumn morning just after their 40th anniversary, Nathaniel woke to find frost on the windows and Adam watching her with a soft expression. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Just thinking how grateful I am. 40 years married, and I still feel like the luckiest man alive every time I wake up next to you. 40 years, 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and more memories than I can count." She reached for his hand. "And I would do it all again in a heartbeat." They rose and went about their day, the routine familiar and comforting. Breakfast together, coffee on the porch watching the ranch come to life, correspondence and bookwork, visits from children and grandchildren stopping by. The rhythm of a life well lived, rich in love and purpose. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Adam and Nathaniel climbed their hill one more time. The ascent was slower now, their joints protesting the effort, but the view from the top was worth it. "Remember when we first came up here?" Adam asked. "When I proposed, I remember everything about that day. The way the light looked, the way my heart pounded, the way you looked at me like I was something precious. You are." He pulled her close. "Every day with you has been a gift, Nathaniel, every single day. And every day with you has been home." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for buying me boots. Thank you for seeing past my pride to my pain. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for having the courage to come west. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for building this life with me." They stayed until the stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed their first tentative courtship, their wedding, the birth of their children, every milestone and ordinary moment of their life together. The ranch lay peaceful below them, lights glowing in windows, smoke rising from chimneys, the evidence of the family and legacy they had created. When they finally descended the hill, Adam held Nathaniel's hand to steady her on the uneven ground. She wore the newest pair of the 3 pairs of boots she always kept, well made and sturdy and fitting perfectly. Her mother's boots were safe in their case, a treasured reminder of where she had come from. But these boots, the ones Adam had bought her, the ones that fit, these had carried her through the life she had built. Through pregnancies and ranch work, through raising children and building a community, through 40 years of partnership with the man she loved more than life itself. Inside the house, they found several of their grandchildren had stayed for the evening, bringing laughter and chaos. Adam and Nathaniel settled into their chairs by the fire, surrounded by family, and watched the children play. This was their legacy, not just in the land or the ranch, but in these lives they had touched, these people they had raised and loved and sent out into the world. As night deepened and the children were eventually collected by their parents, Adam and Nathaniel remained by the fire. The house grew quiet around them, the comfortable silence of 2 people who had said everything that needed saying and could simply be together. "I love you," Nathaniel said softly. "I love you too. Always have, always will." They sat hand in hand as the fire burned low, 2 people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful. The mail-order bride who would not remove her boots and the cowboy who bought her 3 pairs had become so much more than those simple labels. They had become partners, lovers, parents, grandparents, the anchors of a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. Outside, the Nevada night stretched vast and star-filled over the ranch they had built together. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, witnesses to their love story. And somewhere in the house, safely preserved in glass and brass, a pair of worn boots reminded anyone who looked that sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations, and sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Years continued to unfold with gentle grace. Adam and Nathaniel aged side by side, their love a constant in a changing world. The turn of the century brought new technologies to even remote Nevada, but the ranch remained grounded in the values they had established: hard work, honest dealing, and love for the land and each other. Their children took over more of the ranch operations, but Adam and Nathaniel remained involved, their counsel sought, and their presence cherished. Family dinners still happened every Sunday when possible, the house filled with multiple generations sharing food and stories and laughter. On Nathaniel's 60th birthday, the family gathered for a grand celebration. All 5 children were there with their spouses and children, and even a few great-grandchildren toddled around the yard. Adam had arranged for a photographer to capture the moment, technology that still seemed like magic to Nathaniel. As they posed for the family portrait, Adam's arm around her waist and children and grandchildren arrayed around them, Nathaniel felt a profound sense of completion. This was what she had dreamed of in those dark days at the orphanage and the factory, though she had not had words for it then. Belonging, family, home. The photograph became a treasured family heirloom, capturing a moment of joy and togetherness that epitomized everything Adam and Nathaniel had built. When Nathaniel turned 65, she finally retired from most of her charitable work, passing the leadership to Mary, who had inherited her mother's passion for helping others. The scholarship fund she had started now supported dozens of young women pursuing education, and the school fund had helped countless children in Tonopah and surrounding areas. Adam, at 69, handed over the day-to-day ranch management to Thomas and Benjamin, though he still consulted on major decisions and could often be found checking on the cattle or the horses. His expertise was too valuable to waste, Thomas said, and Adam was too restless to fully retire anyway. But he made more time for Nathaniel, for quiet mornings over coffee and long afternoons reading together, for evening walks when the weather permitted and fireside conversations when it did not. They talked about everything and nothing, content, simply to be together. On a warm spring day, Adam and Nathaniel celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a party that brought people from across the state. The ranch was decorated with streamers and flowers, tables groaned under the weight of food, and a small band played music for dancing. Nathaniel wore a new dress for the occasion, deep blue silk that Mary and the twins had conspired to have made for her. And on her feet, she wore the finest pair of boots Adam had ever bought her, soft leather dyed to match the dress. "You are the most beautiful woman here," Adam said, taking her hand for the first dance. "You are biased. Absolutely. 50 years of bias, and I stand by it." He guided her around the floor with surprising grace for a rancher. "Has it really been 50 years? 50 years since we married." 51, since I stepped off that stagecoach and you bought me 3 pairs of boots. Best investment I ever made." They danced surrounded by their family and friends, the physical embodiment of a love that had endured and deepened through 5 decades. When the dance ended, their children presented them with a leather-bound book they had compiled, filled with memories and photographs and stories from their years together. Nathaniel paged through it with tears streaming down her face, seeing their life laid out in images and words. Their wedding photograph, young and hopeful, pictures of each child as a baby, the ranch through the seasons and years, family gatherings and quiet moments, a visual history of a love story that had started with a leap of faith and flourished into something extraordinary. That night, after the guests had departed and the house was quiet, Adam and Nathaniel sat on the porch one more time. The moon was bright, casting silver light over the familiar landscape. 50 years, Nathaniel mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. I prefer the always together version, Adam said. I cannot really remember what life was like before you, and I do not want to. Do you think we have done well? With our lives, I mean. I think we have done better than I ever imagined possible. We raised good children who became good adults. We built a ranch that will support this family for generations. We loved each other through everything life threw at us. What more could we ask for? Nothing, Nathaniel said softly. Absolutely nothing. The seasons continued their eternal cycle, and Adam and Nathaniel moved through them with the contentment of people who had lived fully and loved deeply. They watched grandchildren grow and marry, welcomed great-grandchildren into the world, and saw the ranch continue to thrive under the next generation's care. Adam's health began to decline in his 73rd year, his heart growing weaker despite his stubborn will. Nathaniel nursed him through bad spells and celebrated with him during good days, refusing to waste a moment of whatever time they had left. "You have been the best wife a man could ask for," Adam told her one evening as she helped him to bed, "and you have been my everything." She kissed his forehead. "Rest now. I will be right here." "Always together," he murmured. "Always together," she confirmed. Adam rallied that spring well enough to see the new calves born and to attend the wedding of a granddaughter. He walked Nathaniel to their hill one last time, the climb slow but the view as breathtaking as ever. "I want you to know," he said, settling carefully on their rock, "that every moment with you has been worth it. Every joy, every challenge, every ordinary day. "You made my life extraordinary, Nathaniel. You gave me a life worth living," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave me love and respect and a home. You gave me everything." They sat together watching the sun set, Adam's hand in hers, hearts beating in the familiar rhythm they had found over 53 years of marriage. Adam passed peacefully in his sleep. 2 weeks later, Nathaniel beside him as she had been for more than half a century. The grief was crushing, a physical weight that made breathing difficult, but she was surrounded by the children they had raised and the grandchildren who carried Adam's legacy forward. The funeral was attended by hundreds, testament to the life Adam had lived and the respect he had earned. He was buried on a gentle slope overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved. Nathaniel visited the grave daily, talking to Adam about the ranch, the children, the small details of life he had always cared about. The family worried about her, but she assured them she was all right. Sad, yes. Grieving, absolutely, but also grateful for every day she had been given with the man she loved. She lived 4 more years, watching great-grandchildren grow and the ranch continue to prosper. She finished a memoir she had been writing, the story of a mail-order bride and a cowboy who took a chance on love. The family published it privately, and copies became treasured possessions for each branch of the family tree. On a quiet autumn morning, Nathaniel passed away in her sleep at the age of 77. She was buried beside Adam, their headstones side by side, together in death as they had been in life. The ranch continued for generations, always in the family, always honoring the legacy Adam and Nathaniel had built. The display case with Nathaniel's mother's boots was passed down through the years, a reminder of humble beginnings and the courage to reach for something better. The story of the mail-order bride who would not remove her boots and the cowboy who bought her 3 pairs became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of love, compassion, and the power of small kindnesses. The house Adam had brought Nathaniel to all those years ago still stood, renovated and expanded but fundamentally the same. The hill where he proposed remained a favorite spot for family gatherings and proposals. The land itself seemed to remember the love that had been poured into it, producing rich grass for cattle and supporting the family that called it home. And somewhere, in the space between memory and eternity, a young woman stepped off a stagecoach in worn boots that did not fit, and a cowboy saw her pain and chose kindness. They fell in love slowly and completely, building a life that outlasted them both, creating a legacy measured not in acres or cattle but in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their story forward. It was a love story for the ages, simple and profound, a testament to the truth that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps, and sometimes the most lasting love begins with 3 pairs of boots that fit just right.